sleeping next door to me, and I'm sick of it. I just figured that I would update you guys about what's been going on this chocolate farm in Hawaii before I left. I'm leaving tomorrow to go live in the jungle, and I'm not too sure that they have signal or service or anything like that. I don't really think they have the Wi-Fi out there, so if I'm not able to upload, that's why I haven't even been out there yet. I have no idea what it's gonna be like. But that's part of the fun. I will admit I'm a bit scared. I've never done anything like this before, but it's part of the experience, I guess, Anyway, the reason I'm leaving this specific island of Hawaii, in Hawaii, is not really because of the farm itself. The work is hard, but I don't mind hard work. We would go out and harvest the cocoa beans from the farm, and then chop them, process them, and make the chocolate, which is really cool to learn how to do. That, man, is the only reason I'm leaving this farm, and there's not necessarily a big reason. It's just, I'll tell you about it. It's just a collection of a lot of little things that have happened in my weekish of being here. The first one I can think of is this sounds so mean, but his accent, his Italian mobster accent, is funny, but the way he overemphasizes certain words. For example, we specialize here in this farm in handmade, quality, gourmet Hawaiian chocolate. And he always says the phrase, "It doesn't get any better than this. This is handcrafted chocolate." Handcrafted chocolate. Handcrafted chocolate, okay? It's not like one of those commercial chocolate bars, alright? And he always just goes on this rant about how it's handcrafted chocolate with a W. And he says it so loud. He's so loud. And I know I seem a little crazy. I mean, I am a little crazy, but I'm not loud. I'm not very obnoxious, I don't think. But this man is just so stereotypical. He's 78, so old school Italian. He's from New Jersey, I say it like him now. But he's very much that. So loud. And he always just shouts all the time. And in the mornings when I wake up, he'll be like, Kalani, do you want breakfast? Yes, I want breakfast. It's morning. I want to eat breakfast. I'm hungry. Every morning. I say the same thing every day, but he asks me, do you want breakfast, Kalani? And he's just his voice is just so booming, and I'm already awake at 6 o'clock in the morning here. I have my alarm set for 5:30, so I can mentally prepare myself as I'm waking up to deal with that. But he still does it. Even if I'm in the room with him, won't shout as loud, but he'll still be like, so what do you want for breakfast? Super loud. Yeah, so that's one of the reasons. Another big one, just he took his shirt off in the barber shop to impress this Japanese lady that he had a crush on. And you know how Japanese people are. If you don't barbershop. I went with him because, I mean, it's better than just sitting around in the farm waiting for him to come back. So I went with him to his haircut appointment, and we get in there, and I meet these little Japanese ladies, and they're like, "Oh, nice to meet you." He's like, "This is Kalani. Say hi, Kalani." I'm like, "Hi." And he looks at me, and he's like, to kind of say that's the one he was talking about or whatever. And so he walks over to her little like haircutty stand thing, and before she can even say anything, he's like, "Oh man, I don't want to get my work shirt dirty. I can't get this covered in hair." And she's like, "It's fine, I'll get you one of those bib things, you know, like the little throw over thing before you get your hair cut." And he's like, "No, don't worry about it. I'm just gonna take my shirt off." And I'm sitting there in the little weighty chair things area, and I see this man reach up like this, and he just starts like pulling his shirt off in the middle of the barber shop. And he made sure that everyone knew that I was with him when we walked in, so of course everyone's like looking at me and looking at him like, and he just takes his shirt off, and he's like covered in hair. This man is Italian, white dude, but he's like 3 shades darker than me. Covered in hair from like his shoulders, arms, chest, belly, everything just like hairy. And he's over here taking it off, making all these grunting sounds like, "Oh, and then he gets it off, and he's like, "Oh, what do you think of this, Kalani? Not too bad for a 78-year-old man." And I was just like, "Oh my gosh, don't bring me into this, we are not affiliated." But he's just like, "Do you see this? You think I look good, don't ya? I look good, don't?" And he's just flexing in the middle of the barbershop shirtless, and the Japanese ladies are like big-eyed and like nervous laughing. And I was like, yeah, very Italian, because I wanted to say very hairy, but I didn't want to be mean. I was just like, yeah, very Italian. And he's just like, yeah, blah blah blah, just starts going off about how, you know, good of shape he's in or whatever. And the lady just quickly is like, and ushers him over to the chair after, and he's sitting down, and she's trying to put the little bib thing on him, the poncho thing, whatever it's called, and he's like, "Oh no, I'm good," and she's like, "You're not good, I'm putting this on you." So she's just like, "Oh, it's okay, and she like puts it on him and everything, and then he starts talking about all sorts of stuff and how much he's been working out lately, and it was just very interesting experience. I've never had that happen before. But yeah, there's that, and there was the many times that he would just start spouting out random facts that he knew, and then saying, "Oh, what do you know? You're 23. And he would say that every time I would answer no to one of his questions. For example, he would say things like, this was pretty interesting, but just the way he presented it. Anyway, he said, "Do you know why they call them cops?" And I was like, "No, no idea. Please tell, because you're going to anyway. Why do they call them cops?" And he's like, "Well, back in the 1800s, cops used to wear copper buttons on their uniforms, and they used to call them coppers for that reason. And then they shortened coppers down to cops." I was like, "Oh wow, that is very interesting. I didn't know that." Coppers. And I thought about like the old 1930s cartoons. They'd be like, "something something coppers in and the Boston, New York, Jersey accents, and I was like, wow, interesting. I didn't know that. He's like, yeah, I figured you didn't. And then he started going off about like Emperor Augustus of Rome. He's like, you know why they call it August? Because Augustus named the month after himself. You didn't learn that though, did you? And I was like, maybe. I don't remember if I did. That's interesting. And again, he was just like, what do you know? You're 23. What do you know? He's like, you'll learn this kind of stuff with age. And I was just like, I'm sure you do. I tried not to respond too much because he like feeds off that, I think. And so I kind of just nodded a lot whenever he would spout things like this out, like these random facts. But it did tick me off how much he brought up my age and how I didn't know anything because I was so young. Like, I consider myself kind of patient, but that is something that drives me crazy. I think it's because I had a lot of adults growing up say stuff like that, like relatives that would say, oh, you'll understand when you're older, or they'll say things like, well, when you're my age, then I'll listen to blah blah blah, but they would make the worst life decisions. Like, they would have the most screwed up situations, like life situations going on or whatever, but they would be so quick to point out that you don't know anything. And I was the quietest kid. I'm totally rambling, going down a rabbit hole right now, but like, I never said anything back then. But if I did say something, they would be so quick to shoot it down, and they'd always bring up how I didn't know anything because of my age. And I think that's just like such bull, because yeah, a lot of young people make mistakes, but I have seen way too many people in their 40s and 50s acting like 14-year-olds to think that that saying is just like, I don't know, it bothers me, but yeah, he bothered me with saying that a lot. But he did have a lot of cool stories and whatnot. So another thing that really bothered me a lot was how he would lick his fingers every time he cooked, and it wouldn't just be like a little, like, you know, he would go like 3 knuckles deep and like make this smacking sound after each finger, and then he would stick his like spit covered fingers back into the food that he was like preparing and whatnot. And that's what the days he did that, those are the days that I'd be like, I'm not really that hungry. I'm not really that hungry. I'll just grab some bread or something, some olive oil. But yeah, so he would do really gross things like that when he was cooking our dinner, and he wouldn't accept help because he wanted to do it himself, like a pride thing, and that bothered me so much. Another thing is, what if he's just like listening through the wall right now at like all the crap I'm saying about I'm about to get stabbed to death. Anyway, yeah, another thing he would do was that when he's cooking and cleaning the dishes after done cooking, he would like wipe it off with a sponge or rag, rinse it out real quick in the water, and then just set it in the clean rack. And I can confidently say that about 90% of the dishes that he washed were not clean whatsoever. There were so many times that I'd find chunks of food on the silverware in the clean section. So there would be like example, yesterday morning, we were cutting up avocados. Well, he was, and he washed it off, the knife off, and I went to go use it a little bit later for butter and toast, and avocado chunks all around it. It's just like, so I had to go back behind him and rewash everything every time he would wash dishes, because it was just like, not even like, oh, there's a spot here, a spot there, like chunks of visible avocado and other foods and peanut butter and all over the dishes, and it was just, yeah, that's why I started just saying that I'd have cereal or toast or something, so I'm probably gonna do that tomorrow before I leave too. Yeah, so again, he is 78 years old. He has a briefcase, like an old school briefcase that they have in like the holidays, and he walks around everywhere with that. Every time he goes to the bank, he grabs his briefcase, and when he goes to work, when he goes like literally anywhere, he brings his briefcase, and I just think it's cute. That's the only thing I think is cute though, and his old stories. He was born in the Second World War, so during that time, and I grew up in like the 50s and 60s, so it was really interesting hearing him talk about like celebrities like, you know, Marilyn Monroe and Audrey Hepburn and Frank and the Ink Spots, like, you know, Ella Fitzgerald. All these like crazy big things happened in his lifetime. The Vietnam War, the Korean War. He was military, army, and it was just very interesting hearing about all of his different life experiences. He is apparently he was in a old movie. He used to live in New York for a bit, and he worked with producers and, you know, that whole industry. He worked in that industry, and so he had a foot in the door, and so he'd rub shoulders with like a lot of celebrities, and he was showing me pictures of him back in his like younger years, and he, as much as I like feel about him now, he was pretty handsome. He was pretty handsome back then in the 60s, and I think that it's so crazy how such like suave looking people from that era, you know, they just look so cool and like put together. He looked like a really like gangster Italian boy, really cool looking, and now he's like do they all turn into like crockety forgetful old men? I don't know, but I just think it's interesting how he transformed like that. I wonder what his old young self would think of him now, and if he could see himself turning into that, or if he'd be like, oh, I'd never be like that, you know. Okay, so I just remembered a bigger-ish reason as to why I want to leave too. It's because of a discovery I had recently made. I'm just gonna say it. They have something that rhymes with cats, but they're smaller than cats, and they have buck teeth. And I had no idea. I kept seeing these little, you know, in the chocolate making room, these little brown crumbs everywhere, and I just figured that it was straight up chocolate, right? We're in a chocolate factory. It was he just walks right past me casually, like, setting a rat trap up in his hand, putting the bait in, and setting it, like, next to my feet, and, like, next to the shelves around me, and I was like, what are you doing? And he was like, I'm setting up rat traps. When I tell you my heart. And then I was like, there's a rat. And he was like, yeah, I saw a big one a few minutes ago. It was a big black one, like this big. But he said it in like a really strong Hawaiian accent. They call it pigeon. I thought that pigeon was a whole other language, but apparently pigeon is like a slang way of talking, and then Hawaiian's like the actual language, but not a lot of people speak Hawaiian, but apparently this guy did. But in the moment he was speaking pigeon, and it was like, yeah, a big black one this big, and I'm trying to find it right now, and he's like ducking under stuff trying to find this freaking giant rat, and he's setting up rat traps with peanut butter all around me. And I'm over here like, are you sure that that's what you saw? And he's like, yeah, what do you think all of this stuff around your feet is? I was like, chocolate. So naive, so stupid. Why would they all be little round? I don't know what I was thinking. They were all like the same size, the chocolate chunks. Yeah, so that's another reason. Anyway, the dude that I was talking to, he was like this older, like a 50-year-old, 60-year-old Hawaiian dude. And so he started asking me like where I was from, what I was doing in Hawaii, and he thought I was a local, and that's why he was speaking to me in pidgin. And I was like, yeah, I didn't understand anything you were saying. I had to like really listen to get, pick up what you were putting down. And he was like, oh, that explains why your face was so confused. And I was like, yeah. And then we started talking some more, just about like, casual, regular conversation. And he was really nice, and I just figured that this dude was super talkative. And I mean, he had some interesting stories, like he's half Portuguese, so he would talk about being half Portuguese, half Hawaiian, and what that was like and everything growing up. And then he talked about how his ex-wife's name was actually Kalani too, and I was like, wow, that's interesting, what a coincidence. Because in my entire life on the mainland, that's so weird to think. Back in like non-Hawaii, in the South, I've never met anyone else named Kalani before, except one person, and their name was spelled really weird and different, but not like the Hawaiian name Kalani. And I lived all over, like no one in California, no one in the Northeast, the South. And so I was like, wow, that's a coincidence. I've never met anyone named Kalani. And this man looks at me and proceeds to take his arm out like this and show me a tattoo. And I was like, what the heck is that? And it was just like a big black rectangle. And he's like, well, I had it blocked out, but she's my ex-wife for a reason. So one night when I was sleeping, she decided that it would be a good idea to tattoo her name on my arm. I was like, what? was really nice and really interesting. And I saw him as like a grandpa figure, right? And then this man walks up to me, like closer, as you know, we're still talking. And he reaches in his pocket and he gives me a piece of paper. And I was looking at it like, oh, what does he want me to throw it away from? Because I was standing next to the trash can. And I was like, you want me to toss this for you? And he was like, no, open it. And I was like, y'all, it was his number. He gave me his freaking frankly old phone number. And I was honestly kind of insulted. Because one, I mean, hello? One. And two, you're like 60. It's scary to me because that means that men, like he had like missing teeth in the front, very wrinkly, tatted, his breath reeked of like really strong nicotine. And I don't know, it wasn't my cup of tea. But apparently I was his. And anyway, he had the balls to ask me out then and there. Is there something that I'm doing wrong that would make him think he had a chance? Like, maybe that sounds like rude. No, it doesn't sound rude. He's like 60, right? Like, he was old enough to be my grandpa. My grandpa is 60 something. Maybe he's just like, I don't know. Anyway, yeah, so that was like, it threw me off. It was disappointing because I thought I found an old Hawaiian man friend, but I didn't. And it was also creepy, and it was also like infuriating, like the audacity. I don't know. Anyway, yeah, so that was one of the guys that worked there. Well, he works there, and so if I stay, I'll have to run into him every day. Now, after that, I told him, I was like, so I'm married, and I showed him my ring, and he's like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, I didn't know, I didn't see it, and everything, and I mean no disrespect. And I was like, oh, okay, I'm 23, you're like 60 something. But yeah, so that happened. He did teach me some pidgin though, so that was pretty cool. Pidgin again is like the slang dialect thing they use in Hawaii, and he taught me ono grinds. Ono apparently means good, and grinds means food. So if someone says, oh man, ono grinds, or this was ono grinds or something like that, it means this was really good food. Another phrase I learned related to food is break the mouth. So they're eating something they really like. They're like, oh man, this just breaks the mouth, or something like that. And I think that's so interesting. Like, oh, this breaks the mouth is such an interesting way of saying something tastes really, really good. What was another one? Oh, Nokia Oi, which is like the best. This is the best. So you could say like, oh wow, yeah, I like that beach, like that beach Nokia Oi, and that's how he phrased it to me, like that. So I thought that was pretty interesting. There's a lot of like little phrases I'd hear here and there, like at stores and stuff, and I'm sure I'll hear more too, because I mean, I am flying out tomorrow to another Hawaiian island. also don't want to be, like, perfect, so, or kidnapped and things like that. I'm an idiot putting this on YouTube. But, yeah, so, that'll be fun. I'm excited for that. Again, I'm gonna be living in, like, an off-grid location, so kind of in the jungle. And for half the time, I'll be camping, like, in a tent. I got a sleeping bag and, like, all that stuff. So, yeah. The longest I've ever been in a tent was when I went to Montana to live in the forest up there for a week. A week was good enough for me back then, so we'll see how I do with, like, it's like 2-3 weeks here in the Hawaiian jungle. So, yeah, I'm excited. I hope I can meet some cool people and do some fun things. I'm trying to get out of my shell and explore before I have kids.